Think about the last time someone misunderstood you. Not a stranger, someone close, someone whose opinion actually mattered to you, and you felt that pull in your chest, that desperate need to sit them down and say, no, 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 that's not who I am. Let me explain. You explained, you justified, you carefully chose your words so they'd finally get it. And they didn't. They nodded. Maybe they said, okay, but nothing changed. You walked away still feeling unseen, still carrying this invisible weight that no amount of words could lift. Carl Jung would say you were never supposed to carry that weight in the first place. In fact, he'd say the moment you picked it up, the moment you decided other people's perception of you was your responsibility, that's the moment you lost yourself. And what I'm about to break down in this video might genuinely change how you move through the world. Not in some motivational poster kind of way, in a real, uncomfortable, psychological way. Stay with me. So let's start with the ugly truth. Why do we explain ourselves? Like really, not the noble answer, not because I value communication or because I want people to understand me. Strip all that away. The raw answer? Fear. We justify ourselves because somewhere deep inside, we believe that if people see us wrong, maybe they're right. Maybe we are what they think we are. And if that's true, then we need to correct it immediately. Not for them, for us, because their perception threatens the story we've been telling ourselves about who we are. Jung called this story the persona. The persona is the mask, and I don't mean that in a fake or deceptive way. We all wear one. Jung said the persona is necessary. It's how we navigate the social world. You act different in a job interview than you do with your childhood best friend at 2 a.m. That's not dishonest, that's adaptive. But here's where things go wrong. Most people don't just wear the mask, they become it. They fuse with it. The persona stops being a tool and starts becoming their identity. And once that happens, every time someone challenges that mask, questions your choices, doubts your intentions, misreads your character, it doesn't feel like they're attacking a role you play. It feels like they're attacking you. So you defend, you explain, you over-clarify, you send that long paragraph text at midnight because you can't sleep knowing someone out there has the wrong idea about you. And this is the trap. Because the more you justify, the more power you hand to the people you're justifying yourself to. You're essentially saying, your understanding of me is more important than my understanding of myself. Read that again. Now, here's where Jung goes deeper than most people are comfortable with. He'd ask you a question you probably don't want to answer. He'd say, what if the reason you're so desperate to prove who you are is because you're not fully convinced yourself? This is the shadow. Jung's concept of the shadow is one of the most powerful ideas in all of psychology. The shadow is everything about yourself that you've rejected, buried, hidden, or denied. The parts you don't post about, the parts you don't bring up at dinner, the anger, the jealousy, the selfishness, the pettiness, all of it. And here's the thing, the shadow doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. It leaks. It shows up sideways. It comes out when you're drunk. It comes out when you're tired. And most importantly, it comes out when you feel accused. See, when someone calls you selfish and you know you're not, genuinely know it, you don't feel much. Maybe mild annoyance, but it doesn't shake you. It rolls off. But when someone calls you selfish and it ruins your day, when you can't stop thinking about it, when you're rehearsing arguments in the shower 3 days later, Jung would say that's not about them. That's your shadow waving at you. That's the part of you that secretly wonders, am I selfish? Have I been selfish? And you can't sit with that question, so instead you launch into defense mode. The justification isn't about correcting their perception. It's about silencing your own doubt. And that right there is the chain most people never break free from. Let me pause here and tell you something personal. There was a period in my life where I explained everything, every decision, every boundary, every choice that went against what people expected of me. I thought I was being transparent. I thought I was being a good communicator. But what I was actually doing was asking for permission, disguised as explanation. I wasn't saying, here's why I did this. I was saying, please tell me it's okay that I did this. Please don't leave. Please don't think less of me. And the exhausting part? It never worked. The people who got it didn't need the explanation, and the people who didn't get it weren't going to be convinced by one. That's when I found Jung, and it broke something open. Jung's entire life's work basically orbits one central idea. He called it individuation. Individuation is the process of becoming psychologically whole, not perfect, not enlightened, whole. It means integrating every part of yourself, the light and the dark, the persona and the shadow, the things you're proud of and the things you hide, into one honest, unified self. And here's what most people miss about individuation. It is not a comfortable process. It doesn't feel like a glow-up. It feels like loss. Because in order to become who you actually are, you have to let go of who you've been pretending to be. And that pretending, it kept you safe. It kept people around. It kept the peace. Jung wrote something that I think about almost daily. He said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Read that carefully. He didn't say the privilege of a lifetime is to be liked, or to be understood, or to be validated. It's to become who you truly are. And that journey, by definition, requires you to stop molding yourself into what others expect. Now, what does this have to do with not justifying yourself? Everything. Because justification is the opposite of individuation. Every time you reshape your truth so it's palatable to someone else, you move further from yourself. Every time you water down your decisions so they make sense to people who were never going to support you anyway, you betray your own becoming. Jung saw this constantly in his patients. People who were anxious, depressed, lost, not because something terrible happened to them, but because they had spent decades performing a version of themselves that was designed by committee. Parents shaped this, society shaped that, partners molded this corner, friends pressured that one, and eventually there was no one left inside, just a collection of approved behaviors walking around in a body. That's not a life. That's a role. So what happens when you actually stop explaining yourself? I mean, truly stop. Not as a power move, not as some ego thing where you act all mysterious, but genuinely, deeply, you just stop. First, and nobody warns you about this, you lose people. Some people in your life are only there because of your persona. They don't love you. They love the version of you that never makes them uncomfortable. And when you stop justifying and start simply living according to your own truth, that version dies, and they leave, or they get angry, or they call you arrogant, changed, cold. And it hurts. Let's not pretend it doesn't. But here's what comes after the hurt. Space. For the first time, maybe in your entire life, there's room. Room for people who actually see you. Room for decisions that actually reflect what you want. Room for the kind of peace that doesn't depend on everyone agreeing with you. Jung described this as a kind of psychological sovereignty. You stop being a democracy where everyone gets a vote on your identity. You become a single, grounded, autonomous self. Not rigid, not closed off, but rooted. And something strange happens with other people too. When you stop over-explaining, the right people actually trust you more. Because confidence is quiet, insecurity is loud. When someone is constantly defending themselves, constantly explaining, constantly managing perception, on some level everyone senses that something's off. It signals that you don't even believe your own story. But when you move through the world without apology, without performing, without that frantic need to be understood, people feel the solidity. They might not be able to name it, but they feel it. I want to leave you with one last thought from Jung. He said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Not to explain yourself completely, not to defend yourself completely, to accept yourself completely, with the flaws, with the contradictions, with the parts that don't make sense to anyone else. Because here's the final truth. You were never going to convince everyone. You were never going to craft the perfect explanation that made every single person see you the way you want to be seen. That was always an impossible game. The only game that was ever winnable was the one you play with yourself. Know who you are, own what you are, and let the rest fall wherever it falls. Stop explaining. Start becoming.